Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Om Swastiastu, Namo Buddhaya, and greetings to all of us. Good afternoon to the speaker for International Petrowell 2021 Annual Forum, Head of Petroleum Engineering Study Program Pertamina University, moderators, the committee, and the participants, International Petrowell 2021 Annual Forum. Praise, gratitude, we say the blessings and presence of God. Because of His blessings and guidance, we can carry out the International Petrowell Event 2021 Succession Annual Forum on Sunday, December 5th, 2021, this afternoon. Hopefully, everyone will always be excited and in good health even though the COVID-19 pandemic has not ended yet. With that, in the success of government's regulations for COVID-19 and complying with health protocols, the International Petrowell Annual Forum Seminar event is held in a virtual form like this time. I'm Vina Rahtimanjari from the Corps Protocoler Mahasiswa for permission to request as a Master of Ceremony for this annual forum virtual seminar. For this virtual seminar run smoothly until the end by reading prayers according to their respective religions and beliefs. Praying according to each other's religion begins. Finish. Before we go to events rundown, let me explain you about Annual Forum. Annual Forum is a seminar with professional speakers in the field of petrophysics and well logging related to main theme of International Petrowell 2021. At this webinar, it's hoped that there will be interaction between the speaker and the audience through a question and answer session. Events rundown for this virtual seminar are: first, opening. Next, rules. Remarks. Session 1. Session 2. Handover and placard. Documentation and awarding Petrowell Case Study Competition 2021. For the annual forum, it has two sessions by two speakers. The first speaker will present the theme Core Integration, a hybrid intelligent data-driven solution to improve elastic parameter prediction, while the second speaker will present material with the theme Petrophysics and Challenges in the Future. Here are the rules of International Petrowell 2021 Annual Forum. Number 1. During the presentation of the material, participants are required to turn off the microphone. Number 2. During the questions and answer session, participants can ask questions directly with the raise hand feature and make questions to the comments column. Number 3. Participants must use the camera wisely and use the virtual background provided. And the last, if participants experience problems during the seminar, immediately contact the person in charge via the participant group. Before the start of the event, there was a remarks and thank you from President SPWLA Pertamina University Student Chapter, namely Mr. Pascalis Gesong Sumomba. To Mr. Pascalis, time is yours.
Okay, thank you, MC. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and good afternoon in Indonesian Western Time to all of us. The Honorable Head of Petroleum Engineering Department, Mr. Raka Sudira Wardana. The Honorable, our speakers today, Dr. Zizan Tarik and Ms. Maisari Hendrawati. The Honorable, our moderators, Mr. Muhammad Abdullah Syaifuddin and Mr. Teddy Ivan Sujana. Respectfully, Project Manager and Committee of IPW 2021, also all the participants of today's event. On behalf of the entire SPWLA UP-SG management, I would like to express our deepest gratitude to Universitas Pertamina Petroleum Engineering Department for its supports to us as SPWLA UP-SG so we could handle this event, and also SPWLA Indonesia chapter, Mr. Zizan and Ms. Maisari, who have taken the time to share knowledge and experiences this afternoon. Also, Mr. Abdullah Syaifuddin and Mr. Teddy Ivan, who also took the time to guide us in this discussion this afternoon. Then the event committee who have prepared this event, as well as all those who have provided assistance and input in this event, so this event could run smoothly as it should. Hopefully, this event could run as well as is planned until the end and also provide many benefits for all of us who participate in it. Ampun sekali sih semua, and that's all from me. Thank you, moderator MC.
Thank you to Mr. Pascal. Next, a remark and thank you from Head of Petroleum Engineering Study Program, Pertamina University, namely Mr. Raka Sudira Wardana, Master of Engineering. To Mr. Raka, the time is yours.
Okay, thank you. MC, am I audible? Can you hear
Yes.
my voice?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, I can.
Okay, good day, everyone. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. First, I'd like to thank to God because all of God's blessing, we can have this event, International Petrol Event 2021. And also, I would like to say thank you and big appreciation to our speakers today. First, I want to say hi to Mr. Zishan Tariq, our colleague from postdoctoral research fellow at KFUPM Saudi Arabia. Thank you, Mr. Zihan, for joining us at this event and for your contribution at this event. And I want to say hi and thank you to our second speaker, Mrs. May Sari Hendrawati from Petronas Petrophysicists. Thank you, Mrs. May, for joining us at this event. And I'd like to say thank you also to our alumni. I can see from here, Mr. Muhammad Abdullah. Nice to see you again. And then I want to say hi also to our alumni, Mr. Teddy Ivan Sujana. I'm glad that you still remember Universitas Pertamina and contribute to our university. And last but not least, I want to say thank you to all committee and participant in this event because for your effort and appreciation in this event, so we can have this kind of event. I also want to say congratulations to all peoples who will win the competition in this international petrol event. I hope whether you are not winning or not, all of us still can have benefit from this event. And last, I just hope that we can learn a lot of things from this event and this event will run smoothly. I think that's all for me. Back to MC. Thank you.
Thank you to Mr. Raka. Next, let us start the virtual seminar first session with one of our moderators, Mr. Muhammad Abdullah Shaifuddin, Bachelor of Engineering. For Mr. Muhammad Abdullah, known as Ahmad, is the first president of SPWLA Pertamina University Student Chapter in the 2019 until 2020 period. Immediately, to Mr. Ahmad, we welcome the time and screen to be our moderator.
Thank you very much. Am I audio is hearable?
No, Mr. Ahmad.
Test. Am I hearable?
I can hear your voice, Mr. Ahmad.
Test.
Hello, hello.
Okay. Test. Test.
Okay, check. I can hear your voice, Mr.
Okay.
Ahmad.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Pascalis. Hello, good day, everyone. I'm Muhammad Abdullah Shaifuddin. Permission to take over in this session one as a moderator. So, how are you today? Hope you all fine, happy, and healthy in this beautiful Sunday. The rules regarding Q&A are the same as previously stated by Miss Master of Ceremony, where participants can ask question during a Q&A using the raise hand feature or using a Zoom chat column. And I will give an introduction to our excellent first speaker, Dr. Zishan Tariq. It will be honor to me and better to us if we say hello first to Dr. Zishan Tariq. Hello, Doctor.
Hello, Shabdullah, how are you?
Assalamualaikum. My pleasure to welcome you to Pertamina University. Mr.
Welcome.
Zeshan, tell me if I read your background before.
Yes, sure. Go ahead.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, here is Mr. Zeshan background. Dr. Zeshan Tariq is currently working as a postdoctoral research fellow in Petroleum Engineering Department of College of Petroleum Engineering and Geoscience at King Fahd University of Petroleum and Mineral. He has been actively involved in several research projects in productivity enhancement, swelling inhibition, and machine learning. Dr. Tariq received his PhD MMSE in Petroleum Engineering from KFUPM. He has a strong background in machine learning and laboratory measurement beside teaching experience. Dr. Tariq has filed 3 patents and published up to 100 articles in international conference and peer-reviewed journal. Dr. Tariq is currently serving as a guest editor in special issue of Energy. In addition to that, he has served as a reviewer for several ISI journals, such as Journal of Petroleum Science and Engineering or GPSE, Journal of Advanced Research, Construction and Building Material, and Journal of Petroleum Exploration and Production Technology. He has participated in many workshops, conference, national, and international contests. Dr. Tariq is an active member of the American Rock Mechanic Association or ARMA, Society of Petroleum Engineering or SPE, Society of Petrophysicists and Well Analysis or SPWLA, and Dahran Geoscience Society. Before presentation from Mr. Zeshan start, just a little bit reminder to Mr. Zeshan that you will have 30 minutes to present the presentation about Core log integration, a hybrid intelligent data-driven solution to improve elastic parameter prediction. So, let's start the material, and for to Mr. Zeshan Tariq, the time and screen is yours.
Thanks, Mr. Abdullah, for very nice introduction. Thanks, International Petrol Committee, for having me in this such a nice platform. Let me share my screen. Okay, so you can see my screen, right? Okay, so so the topic of my introduction. Then I will talk about the objectives of my research, some research motivation. Then I will talk about the methodology that I have used in this research. Then I will talk about the results, and with the discussion, then I will conclude my presentation. So start with the introduction. Uh, First of all, before going into the elastic parameters prediction, first of all, we need to understand what is materials elasticity. The material, the ability of the material to return to its original position after the stresses on it are released or removed. This property of the material is termed as elasticity. For the linear elastic behavior of rocks, we used to have two parameters. These are Young's modulus and the Poisson's ratio. Both of these parameters are very critical and very important in several areas of petroleum engineering. First of all, Young's modulus, which is the ratio of axial stress over axial strain, defines the stiffness of the material, how much the material is stiff. And the Poisson's ratio, that it directly tells us the compressibility of the material. For our case, in being a petroleum engineer, we talk about the rock sample. So the Poisson's ratio tells us the compressibility of the rock sample, and it is always lies between 0 and 0.5. 0 means the fully compressible rock or sample, and the 0.5 means incompressible rock. So basically, your Poisson's ratio is also the ratio of transverse strain to the axial strain. So let me go to the next slide. Okay. Uh, uh, Let us see the application of rock elastic parameters. In the field of petroleum engineering, which is we can see the application of rock elastic parameters in everywhere. Starting from the geosciences, we can see the application of rock elastic parameters to measure the in situ stresses of the earth. By in situ stresses, what does that mean? In situ stresses means we have like three type of stresses acting on the rock sample, which is minimum horizontal stress, maximum horizontal stress, and the vertical overburden stresses. To know the in situ stresses, we need to know about the elastic parameters. In the drilling, there are three major applications in the drilling. We can see the like in the safe mud weight window, like are we going to have underbalanced drilling, overbalanced drilling? To have the complete mud weight window, we need to know the accurate prediction of the rock elastic parameters. Borehole instability is also very important and critical issue during the drilling. To cope up with the drilling problem like borehole instability, we need to know the accurate prediction of elastic parameters. Optimum well trajectory in the horizontal well, in the inclined wells, we need to know where the well is going. So the elastic parameters define the trajectory of the rock elastic parameter. Also in the well stimulation like hydraulic fracturing, the orientation of the hydraulic fractures is also depending on the minimum and maximum horizontal stresses, which we can determine from these elastic parameters. For the production of sand, the sand production is also a very critical issue in oil and gas. If you are producing a lot of sand, then you have a lot of problem in the surface like erosion, corrosion, uh, the damage to the separators, you name it. Yani, you have to do a lot of efforts, lot of you need to install a lot of liners, other the slotted liners to control the production of sand. You have to use the chemical method to control the sand production. So if you know your rock elastic parameters, you can predict the sand production before having it on the surface and apply the reactive approach. Then we have the another application of these rock elastic parameter in the reservoir compaction and subsidence. Reservoir compaction and subsidence happens when the pore pressure of the reservoir released. Then the reservoir start compacting. If the rock sample is not that strong to withstand the load of the overburden stresses, then we can see this reservoir compaction subsidence issue. So if we have these rock elastic parameters, if we know these parameters accurately before having this problem, then we can come up with some ideas or come up with some treatment to stop or minimize this compaction and subsidence issue. Okay, so now come to the point, how can we determine these rock elastic parameters? Basically, rock mechanical parameters comprises of elastic parameters and failure parameters. In this particular research, I will be talking about the elastic parameter, which is Young's modulus and positive. Failure parameters include the unconfined compressive strength, friction angle, and the cohesion. So from the laboratory, you can measure these rock elastic parameter directly. Indirectly, you can get it from the bell logs. From the laboratory, you have two methods to determine this elastic parameter. Number one is the triaxial compression test. The number two is uniaxial compression test. From the triaxial compression test, you can measure the elastic parameters and the failure parameter, and we call it static parameters because the parameter obtained from the triaxial compression test are truly represent the state of stress on the rock sample. While the indirect methods, like we can get it from the acoustic logs and the density logs, these are called the dynamic parameters. Usually there is a difference between the dynamic and the static parameters. And there's like dynamic parameters are always higher than the static parameter because of the frequency issue. The way that we measure these parameters, because of frequency, we will have the higher value of this elastic parameters. So we need to the second method that I the uniaxial compression test for to measure the uniaxial compressive strength, which is called UCS. We can use the stress test machine and we can use the UCS machine as well. Once we have these parameters, like the from the scratch test, we can get the compressional wave velocity and the shear wave velocity. Once we have this compression and shear wave velocities, we can get the dynamic Young's modulus. And once we have this, we know the density of the rock, we can come up with the dynamic parameter. From the Poisson's ratio, we just need the compressional wave velocity and the shear wave velocity. We will have the Poisson's ratio, that the dynamic value. For the static parameter, the figure shown over here on the right hand side is basically tells us the deviatoric stress versus axial strain on the right hand side. On the left hand side of the graph, we have the radial strain. From the axial strain, we can get the Young's modulus, which is basically a slope during the linear region. And the Poisson's ratio, we can get it from the radial side of the graph. Now see the difference between the scratch test and the unconfined compressive strength test. Scratch test is basically non-destructive test. The limited effort is required to measure the rock property, which is the strength, and we call it scratch strength. And scratch strength is approximately equal to the unconfined compressive strength of the rock. From the scratch test, we can also get the compressional wave and the shear wave velocity. On the other hand side, we have the uniaxial unconfined compressive strength, which is basically obtained from the UCS test, and it is a destructive test. Once you apply this UCS test on the rock sample is destroyed and cannot be used for further analysis. While scratch test is non-destructive test, you just have to create a groove, continuous groove. You just insert a cutter on the surface of the rock, and the force taken by the cutter tells us the strength of the rock, and you can utilize this rock sample for further analysis. But for the unconfined compressive strength, once the sample is broken, you cannot use it for further analysis. We call it destructive testing. And basically it is yeah. Okay, so now move on to the objectives. The objectives of this research study is to provide a data-driven solution to integrate core and log data in order to predict the linear elastic parameters, which is Young's modulus and Poisson's ratio. Since we have used the data from the Middle Eastern carbonate reservoir, so the equation or the correlation that I'm going to present will be valid for the carbonate rocks only. But the methodology can be applied for the sandstone, shale, and any type of rock you have it. It depends on the data that you have it in your hand. The second objective of my research is to provide a new model and empirical correlation to predict this elastic parameter in addition to the machine learning models. The new correlation can be coupled with any software, like you can couple it with the TechLog, you can code it in the Excel. When you don't need to use it machine learning software or engine to run these correlation. You can utilize it without any model, any engine. Okay, now come to the standard workflow. Like, what is the standard workflow to measure the static parameters? Since we have to collect the VP and VS from the well logs and the corresponding static Poisson's ratio or the elastic parameter, which is Young's modulus, from anywhere from the core sample, then calculate the dynamic Poisson's ratio or the elastic parameter, which is Young's modulus, then try to correlate static and dynamic parameter and come up with the relation. Use this relation on any well log, you can get the continuous strength of the elastic parameter that you need it. So over here, the figure shown over here is like we have the continuous profile of well logs. So normally we use compressional wave and the shear wave and the density log. Then we add the core data. Core data is not continuous. We know that getting the core sample from the depth of the reservoir is very expensive and technically difficult challenge to get it. So once we have the core sample from the depth of interest, we do the laboratory test with the static parameter triaxial test, compressional test, and then we try to integrate the core and the log data, and we will have the continuous strength profile that is shown over here on the right hand side. Okay, so the primary motivation behind this research study is to reduce the uncertainty associated with the formation evaluation. As I told you that the core data is not continuous. The points, the depth where we have the core data, we are very certain. But the regions where we don't have the core data, it's very uncertain. So we have to use the machine learning to reduce this. We cannot eliminate this uncertainty, but we can minimize it using the advanced machine learning algorithms. Since only well-logged data are not enough to provide the full characterization of the formation, logs require calibration with the core data to provide the real log solution. The advantage of integrating core log data is to obtain higher precision of the core data and higher resolution of log data. Retrieval of the core sample from the depth of interest, as I mentioned earlier, is challenging and expensive task. But on the other hand, core data provides the ground truth. The reality, once you have this core data, this is the reality. This is the truth. Core is sparse and depth is specific. Information obtained is not easily transportable. Therefore, integration of core log and calibration provide more insightful meaning of the reservoir properties along the complete region of interest. Okay, so this is the methodology that I have used in my research to come up with a machine learning model to predict the elastic parameter. First of all, we have done the data acquisition and pre-processing. We have got the data from the well logs of several wells on the Middle Eastern Carbon Reservoir, and we had the corresponding core log data. Then we tried to do the data analysis. The data analysis include the finding of the statistics of the data, like what is the skewness, what is the kurtosis, what is the minimum maximum of the data that we have it. We have plotted the histograms to know where the distribution is lying. Is it positively skewed? Is it negatively skewed? Then we came up with the heat maps. We plotted the pair plots, and we came up with certain kernel density function to know more about our data. Then we try to figure out the relative importance of the input parameters with the output. Our output was the elastic parameter, and the input was our the well logs, the compressional wave velocity, shear wave velocity, and the density log. Then we try to apply different machine learning technique, artificial intelligence technique. In this particular research, we have applied the artificial neural network, fuzzy logic, and the support vector regression. Then, in order to improve the machine learning model prediction, we try to optimize it. As you know that for the machine learning model, there are certain hyperparameters associated with them. So we need to tune them. So for the tuning of them, we have used several optimization algorithms like particle sum optimization algorithm to optimize the parameters of these machine learning models. After that, we tried to came up with a case study, and we evaluated the best AI techniques on the basis of certain criteria that we have selected, like error, correlation coefficient, and the visualization. After that, we tried to use this machine learning model on the blind data set to know whether our models were generalized or not generalized. Once we satisfied with the field validation and comparison, we then move for the recommendation and the extraction of the correlation. So this is, in a nutshell, this is the methodology I have used in my research. Next is about the pre-processing. Uh, for the data pre-processing, we have used certain criteria, which is quality check of all data points. By quality check, I mean if all the depths were if all the data were available in all the depths. If there was some missing data, then we have came up with certain criteria to fill the gaps. We removed the outliers. We had removed the outliers on the basis of our domain knowledge and using the statistical method like Tukey's method and the box and Whisker plots, also on the basis of the domain knowledge. After that, we have tried to perform the statistical analysis and fill missing gap, as I mentioned earlier, and we have applied the normalization and standardization technique if required. We have not used this normalization in all of our analysis because normalization is like a hit and trial method. Sometimes you get good results, sometimes you get bad results. So you need to try it, and if you get good result, then continue with it. Otherwise, leave it. Okay, so then we have the goodness of fit test. By goodness of fit test, it means that we have evaluated our model based on this type of errors. Every absolute percentage error, which is shown over here, the root mean square error. The root mean square error is the best type of error that we have utilized to know about the model's prediction. We have used the coefficient of determination criteria to know about the fitting of the new model. Okay, then we move on the depth shifting and the correlation coefficient criteria. Okay, for the depth shifting, as I mentioned earlier, we have integrated the core and the log data. So there is always some discrepancy between the core and the log data. To remove this difference, we need to shift the core and the log data. So we have shifted the core, we plotted the core porosity and the log porosity, and we found that the peaks were not matching. So we tried to shift the core data by adding 2.5 units. The depth column, the vertical side is the depth, and the horizontal is the porosity. So this was a very important step before applying machine learning technique blindly. You will get the result, but it will not make sense if your depth, if your core and the log data are not from the same depth. Then we have the Pearson correlation coefficient criteria to know the relative importance of the input parameters with the output parameters. As I mentioned earlier, correlation coefficient always lies between -1 and +1. The negative one shows the strong inverse relationship between the two parameters. Let's say compressional time is negatively related with the Poisson's ratio over here. So it means that if operational time is increasing, the Poisson's ratio is decreasing. On the other hand, if we have the positive one, it means that the two parameters are directly related. It means that bulk density is increasing, the Poisson's ratio will also increase. So it shows that if you have any value lies near to zero, it means it has no relation. So if any parameter which is near to zero, we will not take it for further analysis because it has no impact on our output parameter, which is the static parameter, Poisson's ratio, and the Young formula. So all of these parameters that we have shown over here has some good relationship with the last parameter. Then the graph shown over here is basically a lithology crossplot between the uh, uh, the bulk density is plotted on the vertical y-axis. So, and you can see this, the purple dots are basically our data point, which is mostly on the limestone line, limestone basically carbonate rock. So, and anything we had it over here, we removed it after applying the QC because particularly for this particular research, we are talking about the carbon reservoirs only. Okay, so we started with artificial neural network. In artificial neural network, we have used one layer and shown we have several neurons in the one layer. Shown over here just a general structure for the artificial neural network. These are our input parameters, which is density, compressional time, shear time, and this is the bias. And we have used 70% of the data for the training and 30% for the testing and the validation phase combined. And we have predicted the static parameters, which is our output layer on the output layer. How we selected the 70% of the data and how we selected 30% of the data, it's totally random, and we have used the K4 cross validation criteria for the validation. I will come to the K4 cross validation in my coming slide. Okay, so for the artificial neural network, we have utilized the criteria of realization. Since we know that artificial neural network is basically give you the different result whenever you run it. So in order to come up with the best model, we have run our model 5,000 times in order to get the best result, and we picked the model which gave us the less average absolute percentage error or at the same time the less r square. On the figure on the right hand side shows the histogram of the training error and the histogram of the testing error, and here we are plotting the residual errors. So the larger the bell means the your error is more and it's spreading. So for the training, the bell is very sharp, and you can see that most of the time we got the zero error. And the testing we had a little bit larger bell, but still the most of the time we got the zero error. It means that our prediction was really good. In order to generalize in order to generalize our prediction, we came up with the criteria. We came up with the objective function, which is the combined function of the mean absolute error in training and the testing, and the R square in training and testing. Just because at the same time uh, you need to monitor the two things, the error and the correlation coefficient. So we came up with the objective function that can monitor the two things at the same time. So we want less error and the higher R square. So using this function, we came up with the best number of neurons, which I guess around 19. Then we came up with the k-fold cross validation criteria to validate our model. These are the parameters, hyperparameters of the different machine learning technique we have utilized. As I mentioned, we have used artificial neural network, fuzzy logic, and the support vector regression. We had for the artificial neural network, uh, we tried to tune 5 parameters, which are type of the artificial neural network, the hidden layer, number of neurons, learning algorithm, transfer function, and we changed it from the minimum to the maximum value and came up with the optimum value based on the criteria we have selected. For the fuzzy logic, we have used GenFIS type 1 and 2, and we found that 2 is better than the GenFIS type 1 and the cluster radius we have varied. For support vector regression, we also tried to tune the hyperparameters, and we got some good results with the Gaussian function, and the kernel option value was 1.55. The penalty for overfitting, which is one of the critical parameter for support vector regression, we found that the value was 0.01 because it gave us a less error. For the regularization parameter, we came up with the value of 3000 based on the optimization we have used. These are the comparison of the three techniques. Visually, you can see that for the Young's modulus prediction, the artificial neural network resulted in the average absolute percentage error of 3.3% with R square of 0.92, while NFIS and support vector machine had more error, around 6 and 7% with our low value R square. Similarly, we have tried to plot the testing phase for the static young modulus prediction. And during the testing phase, we found that the error was low in case of artificial neural network, while fuzzy logic and support vector machine resulted in more error. So we uh, we s- we decided that artificial neural network is much better than other techniques. So from the artificial neural network, as I mentioned earlier, that one of the objective was to came up with the correlation. So this is the correlation that we can utilize in any software or engine to predict the static young modulus, which is a function of the weights and biases of the artificial neural network and the parameters, which is bulk density, compression time, and the shear time. And these are the weights and biases that we got from the artificial neural network after the tuning. Similarly, we try to validate our model on the new field dataset that we have not used in our training and the testing phase. This is the continuous profile of the input parameters, the bulk density, compressional time, and the shear time. And we have the continuous profile of the predicted Young's modulus. And as you can see, the red one is the predicted Young's modulus. The gray one is the dynamic Young's modulus, and these yellow dots are the core data that we had it from the actual well, and we can see that the predicted, which is the red one, and the core data are very much aligned. Like the curve is almost moving on top of them, and we can see it on the 45-degree cross plot between the predicted and the actual value, and we had the R square of 0.872. As I mentioned earlier, the dynamic Young's modulus is always greater than the predicted the static Young's modulus. So from this graph, we can see that the dynamic Young's modulus is greater than the static Young's modulus. So this is also another check for our model prediction, that our prediction from the model is always lower than the dynamic one. Then we try to compare, as this work is not we have tried to improve the previous model. So a lot of work has already been done in the past. A lot of people have came up with the correlation. So we try to compare our new correlation with the previous published correlation. We found that the proposed correlation has kind of low error than the other correlations. Like we try to compare with the King's 1983 model, ESA and Ghazi 1988, Wang 2000, Candy in 2010, and Najib in 2015. So our model predicted with 6.2 percent error, and the other models were like above 25, 30%, somewhere there. Similarly, we have adopted the same methodology to came up with the prediction of Poisson's ratio, and we found that for the case of Poisson ratio as well, because the data was from the same field, I mean the same reservoir, so we found that artificial neural network was much better than the other techniques and just support vector machine. As you can see here from the cross plot, the R square of artificial neural network was 0.96, and while NPS and STM were 0.91 and 0.84. Similarly, we came up with the correlation for the Poisson ratio that we can utilize in any software like Decklog, Excel, MATLAB. You can code it without using the machine learning or artificial intelligence softwares. Again, we tried to validate our model on the field, and we came up with the, since there is no relationship between the dynamic Poisson ratio and the static Poisson ratio, there is no criteria. Sometimes it can go up or sometimes it can go down than the static parameter. So we cannot utilize this criteria to judge our model is good or not. So we have not we don't have the profile for the dynamic Poisson ratio. We just plotted the static Poisson ratio with the core data, and we can see that the R square, the actual and the predicted was 0.90. Anything above 0.9 or 0.85 usually consider good in terms of statistics. So we tried to validate our model on the field data set that was published by D. Andrea in 1965, and we can see that the absolute percentage error was 5.1% within the predicted value. Similarly, here again, we try to compare our correlation with the previously published correlation for the static Poisson ratio, and the results were quite better. Now come to the conclusion of this research study. Laboratory core measurement and basic well-load data are used to build or to estimate continuous elastic parameter profile. Since we have integrated the core and the log data to come up with the continuous profile based on the results and the discussion and the model tuning, we can come up with this correlation, that the developed correlation to predict the linear elastic parameters are a function of the three input parameters, which is the bulk density, compression time, and shear time. We saw that the new proposed correlations were validated on the real field data set, and we have tested on the certain criteria, like if our correlation is prediction is going above or below the static parameters or not. And we have tried to compare our correlation on with the published correlations, and we found that the new models uh, are capable of giving the less error than the previous one. The fourth point, we can say that the new correlation can be used to predict the elastic parameter on carbonate reservoir rock. The similar methodology can be used for sandstone and shale reservoir, but you have to retrain your model on the data set for the sandstone and the shale reservoir. For this particular correlation, since we have used the carbonate reservoirs, so if anyone wants to utilize this correlation, so make sure that the reservoir data are from the carbonate reservoir rock, and the input parameters they are trying to use should lie between the range on which our model is trained. I will give the reference of my paper. So this work is already being published in some of the good journals. So the data statistics are mentioned on these papers. So if anyone want to use this correlation, so make sure that their input parameters are lying within the range on which our model is trained. For further reading, you can refer our this paper. The complete methodology and discussion are presented in this paper, which we have published in Neural Computing and Application 2019. We have utilized a similar methodology to come up with the correlation for the unconfined compressive strength. As I mentioned, our particular presentation was on the elastic parameter, but we can utilize the same methodology for the failure parameter as well. So we have published this work in the Petroleum Geosciences in 2018. So anyone wants to see the methodology can refer this paper. Also, we have a brief introduction about the methodology published in our conference paper back in 2016. So these are some of the references for this work. And thank you. Any question, feel free to ask me.
Okay, thank you very much to Mr. Zeshan, who has provided extraordinary and very interesting material. With that material, allow me to conclude that there are four big points from Mr. Zeshan presentation. The first is the developed equation will predict linear elastic parameter supported by three log data. There are bulk density, compression time, and shear time. The project new empirical equation was validated on the correct field dataset, and it had been ascertained that the prediction of the proposed model were getting ready to the first data. The third is the empirical model is additional compared with the general approach. And the last, the new correlation applies to carbonate rock and work faithfully over the vary of the data set on that the model is training. Ladies and gentlemen, we are currently in a Q&A session where this session is given a maximum of 20 minutes to ask a question. You can ask with the raise hand feature, and I will allow you to open mic, or you can chat with Zoom chat feature. Starting with the first question from Regina Ruby from Pertamina University. The question is, can you explain more about the carbonate interpretation? Maybe Mr. Zeshan can answer the question. Hello, Mr. Zeshan.
By carbonate interpretation, you mean you have the data set.
Hello, okay.
Yeah. Okay. So coming back to the question that was asked about the carbonate rock interpretation. So what we have done over here is like we have been provided with a data set that comprises of sandstone, limestone, and dolomite because we got it from several wells. So some of the data points were lying on the sandstone and dolomite region. So utilizing the different approaches, we try to clean up the data. We try to clean the data that were lied on the sandstone and dolomite region. So all we try to pick up only the data set that were lying on the limestone for our modeling.
Thank you, Mr. Zeshan. And we have one raised hand from Mr. Teddy Ivan. I allow you to ask Mr. Zeshan directly.
Okay, thank you, Mas Ahmad. Very interesting presentation, Mr. Zisan. Because my thesis is talking about machine learning for fracture porosity. I will ask you about any limitation that you state to build this machine learning, maybe limitation that you state.
Mhm. Okay, so the limitation of the machine learning model is one of the limitation that I can comment is like machine learning models are very good when you are doing the interpolation, but whenever you move outside the range on which your model is trained, the prediction on the reliability is very low. So you need to make sure that the input parameter that you are using for the prediction or for the validation should lie within the range on which your model is trained. And secondly is the generalization issue. So you need to, first of all, you can train anything, but it should make some sense. So data cleaning, data analysis is one of the very critical step before jumping into the machine learning approaches. Like you have to utilize certain criteria to look into your data, what your data is giving you a message. Like you have to come up with some histograms and you need to know where your data is lying. Is it negatively skewed, positively skewed, or you have to come up with the heat maps, which is very important, which are very important to give you information about the input parameters with the output parameter and the co-linearity among the input parameters. Like you have 10 input parameters, and there is a dependency between the input parameters. Then it is very useless to keep both of them in your model. You can remove one of them and continue with the only one, because it will reduce the CPU time. It will make your computational modeling much faster. So before, the limitation is like, you can say that before doing any machine learning approach, you have to do the QC of your data is very important. Yes.
Okay, so for the data, so be corrected the first one, yeah. Yeah. Okay, for the second question, did machine learning that you state in here is applicable for our reservoir on or certain reservoir or certain
Okay.
field?
Okay, so machine learning models are data-driven models. Okay, so these models are driven by the data. So we have provided the carbonate reservoir rock data. So these models will only be applicable to the carbonate reservoir. Like if you want to apply our models, so you have to come up with this lithology cross plot by plotting the bulk density and neutron velocity, and you can see that where your input parameters are lying. If they are lying on the limestone region, then you can go ahead and use this model. If your input parameters are lying on somewhere on the sandstone dolomite region, then no, because these models are data driven. We have provided the data set for the carbon reservoir, but the methodology is same. If you want to retrain these models on the sandstone and dolomite region, you have to provide the data set for the sandstone dolomite.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Zisan.
You're welcome.
Okay, for the next question, it's come from Arini Fitri from Universitas Pertamina and also Pascal from Universitas Pertamina. It's talk about the data. The first question is from Arini: how to validation the data that we get using a hybrid intelligent data driven solution. And the second, what if we don't have core data? Is there any kind of data that could replace the core data in making the model?
Okay. Okay, so for the first question, which is very good question, how to validate these models? Okay, how I did the validation, I will talk about first. Like for my side, how I did the validation is like I have the data set around 500 data point. Let's say I divide it into training and the testing. Let's say I have used 400 data points for the training and 100 data points for the testing. So I trained my model and I tested simultaneously to come up with the trained machine learning models. Once I done with this training and testing phase, I move to the next step, which is the validation. For the validation, I have used the data set which was not used during the training and data set. The data set, like this is a separate data set that I kept it for the validation, which I mentioned in one of my slides. I will show it to you. Okay, for the validation, I for the validation of the Young's Poisson's ratio, I have used the published data set that was published in the D and Ria paper in 1965. 3 logs were provided, and the corresponding static Poisson ratio were provided. So what I did is like I checked the data set first, like whether the input parameters published by this author are within the range on which my model is trained. If some points were outside, then I did not use it for my validation, because as I mentioned earlier that machine learning models will only work when the data is within the range. So once the input parameters were within the range, I used them in my model and I came up with the Poisson ratio profile and tried to compare with the already published correlation. So I got a error of 5.1%. So this is how you can do the validation, and there are another way to do the validation. Like for in any other case, like if you are not doing the rock analysis, let's say you are doing something related to the production or well performance, so you can come up with the trend analysis. You can come up with the graphs. You change the parameters, like you change uh, density and try to change the density and keep other parameters constant and try to come up with different type curves and see the trend. Like if it makes sense or not sense. Then validation on the blind data set or the type first. There are the two ways to validate your model. Uh, can you repeat the second question? I just lost it.
The second question is, what if we don't have a core data?
Hmm.
Is there any
Okay.
kind of data that could replace the core data in making the model?
Okay. So if you don't have the core data, then you have to rely on the correlations, like the already published correlations. For this particular research, we are providing the solution that if your input parameters for this to use this correlation, you don't need to have the core data. You can have just input parameters, and you need to see these input parameters are lying within the range on which our model is trained or not. So if you don't have the core data, you cannot come up with this integrated core log hybrid data solution thing. You have to utilize the already published correlation on your input parameters, and you can come up with the continuous profiles of the elastic parameters, like Young's model and poisons. You normally, when you don't have the core data, you have to live with this correlation. But to validate your correlation, you need to make sure that you have at least few data points from the offset well, or you need to study about your lithology and see is there similar lithology have some core data available or not. Then you can come up. Then you can utilize this model. Yes.
Okay, the question from Firman from Pertamina University. Why did you choose 7 as the K value in K fault validation? It is a based on turning, or are there other consideration? Sorry.
Okay. It's a very good question. For the K4 cross validation, we have selected 7 K4. There is no criteria. You can come up with the 10 fold, 15 fold, 20 fold. There is no criteria for that. But usually the larger the better. So but for with our case, the 7-fold criteria gave us very good error. We reached to the very low error value, so that's why we use the 7-fold criteria. But there is no limitation. You can move to 10, 15, whatever the capacity or CPU capabilities you have it in your hand, you can utilize it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Zeshan, for the many answer. Or maybe I will ask, especially from me. Okay, Mr. Zeshan. Like the update data or information that I read, Indonesia has once more discovered oil and gas reserve in Krishna Field in the Thousand Island, or we call it in Indonesia Kepulauan Seribu, 45 kilometer north in Jakarta. And what I read, the geological structure of the Thousand Island that is located close to the coast is an isolated patch of reef carbonate. Will a hybrid intelligent data and improved elastic parameter prediction answer this discovery challenge? And what your suggestion for young petroleum, especially in young engineer in Indonesia about this discovery?
Mhm. Okay. First of all, you need to look what kind of data available at the moment. Do you have the core data available or not? Have you done the coding or not? Or from the coding perspective, once you have the core sample, do you have the elastic parameters available, like at particular depth, like this Young's modulus and the Poisson's ratio or not? If you have it, and then you need to do the range of these parameters. Also, the well logs for this field are available, and what kind of well logs are available. Then you have to look. You don't have to match that in order to utilize this hybrid data driven this particular research. You have to match that your well logs are similar to the what we have used in our research study. Otherwise, the methodology that I have presented is very generalized. You can, if these days Python and the MATLAB. Python is the open source software. You can utilize it. there are a lot of machine learning tools available in the Python. What you have to do is like, if the core data is available and the log data is also available, then you can follow the research step that I have just talked about and come up with your own local model that you can utilize to predict these elastic parameters for further analysis. Once you have this good prediction of the elastic parameter, it will help you to select the proper mud bait or proper drilling engineering applications, like to come up with a safe mud bait and to avoid the borehole instability issues. And then later on, if you want to apply the this hydraulic fracturing, you will have the knowledge about the in situ stresses, where is maximum minimum horizontal stress based on this elastic parameter. That will help you to guide the fractures. First, the bottom line is the methodology that I've presented is generalized. You just need to make sure that what kind of data available in this new discovery. Thank you.
Thank you very much to Mr. Zishan, and thank you to the all participants. But we are sorry because the question and answer time for this session is only 20 minutes. If there are participants who want to discuss further with Mr. Zishan, can contact him via LinkedIn or email Mr. Zishan. So, I'm Ahmad as moderator for this session. We'll close session 1 with Dr. Zishan, and the next is a virtual handover session for Dr. Zishan.
Okay, thank you to Mr. Ahmad, and thanks to Dr. Zeshan with the presentation of material in the form of Crowdlock integration, a hybrid intelligent data-driven solution to improve elastic parameter prediction. The material that can increase our knowledge about the world of petrophysics and well logging. Next, we ended the virtual souvenir handover session as a form of international petrowells gratitude to the speakers. Starting from Mr. Zizan Tariq, by the president of IPWLA Pertamina University Student Chapter, namely Mr. Fascalis. The Mr. Fascalis, time and screen is yours.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Zizan Tarek, for a very interesting discussion that we have done before. And also on behalf of Universitas Pertamina Student Chapter and Universitas Pertamina student, it is an honor for us to have you in this opportunity to discuss directly with you. And also as our gratitude, we would like to express, and we hope this memento can be well accepted by you. Thank you, Mr. Zizan.
Thank you. Well, you're welcome. Thank you for having me in this very nice international petrowell forum. And thank you again.
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Zizan.
Ladies and gentlemen, next, let's start the virtual seminar session 2 with our second moderator, namely Mr. Teddy Ivan Sudjana, Bachelor of Engineering. Mr. Teddy is the second president of SPWLA Pertamina University Student Chapter in the 2020 and 2021 period. He is a fresh graduate from Petroleum Engineering Pertamina University. Immediately to Mr. Teddy, time and screen to be our moderators.
Okay, is my voice clear, Pina?
Yes, it's clear, Mr. Teddy.
Okay. Hello everyone. How are you today? I hope you all healthy and happy. Okay. My name is Teddy Vanzana. I will permission to take over in second session as the moderator. Okay. Previously, the rules regarding question and answer are the same as previously stated by Vina, Master of Ceremony, where participant can ask question during question and answer in the second session using raise hand feature or the Zoom chat column. Okay, so I will give an introduction to our excellent second speaker. Her name is Ibu Mai Hari Hendrawati. Hello, Ibu Mai. How are you today?
Hi, Teddy. I'm fine, thank you.
Okay. Okay, previously I will show you about her background. In the education, Ibu Mai Sari Hendrawati is study for Master in Science in Petroleum Engineering at Heriot-Watt University, Malaysia in 2021 until now. And then in 2003, she got her Bachelor of Engineering, Petroleum Engineering at Bandung Institute of Technology. Okay, and he has a working experience. She is petrophysicist at Barangfield Petronas Caligari, Malaysia, from July 2016 until now. And then she is a petrophysicist at La Amarga Chica Petronas Caligari, Argentina, 2016. And then she also petrophysicist at USMA, Malaysia, December 2013 until October 2015, and much more work experience that she has. Okay, before presentation from Ibu Mai, I want to remind to Ibu Mai that you will have 30 minutes to present the presentation about petrophysics and challenges in the future. I think Ibu Mai is ready. So let's start the material, and for Ibu Mai, the time is yours.
Okay, thank you for the introduction, Teddy. Maybe I will start to share my screen. Oh, I cannot share my screen because I got notification. The other participant is sharing. Maybe can you stop sharing first so I could sharing mine?
Okay, maybe the operator can help up.
Yeah. Okay, I think I can share no. Okay, I would like to check. Can you hear me clearly?
Okay.
And also, can you see my screen right now?
Okay, I can see your screen.
All right. Okay, thank you for the introduction, Teddy, and congratulations for your graduation. Fresh graduate from University of Pertamina. What achievement. Assalamualaikum and good afternoon, everyone. First of all, actually, it's my great pleasure and honor to be here with all of you today. Thank you for the organizer of the International Petrowell and also SPWLA University Pertamina Student Chapter for the invitation and arrangement. I really appreciate that. Actually, I would like to correct my curriculum vitae a bit. My background is geology engineer. I was geologist by background, so I graduated from ITB from geology engineering, not from petroleum engineering. But it's okay. Later on, I would why I would like to correct that one because this will be related with my presentation today. So prior my session, Dr. Zihan shared very interesting topic regarding core and log integration and machine learning. That's really a big achievement in the oil and gas industry when we can see much more artificial intelligence work applied in the subsurface interpretation. My presentation may be a little bit less technical, but I'm hoping it will be useful for all of you, all the young engineer here, because I would like to use this opportunity to share some of my thought on petrophysics and challenges in the future. Also, I tend to talk very fast, so maybe if you feel I talk very fast, you can stop me a bit. Okay, maybe I would start with my first slide. When I was preparing the material for today's session, I talked to some of my friends who are working in oil and gas industry. Some of them are petrophysicists, also geologists and reservoir engineer, and also some of my Wells College. Reason I asked their opinion because I would like to have some feedback regarding what they thought about the petrophysics current role and what would happen in the future. Basically, a simple question. We know a title as petrophysicist may be not that famous compared with our brother and sister, the geologist or reservoir engineer. So I'm just a bit curious. can we survive in this industry, this oil and gas industry, and how the future looks like. Also, I went online and did a small research about what is the future challenges for us as a petrophysicist. So I found this interesting paper from Mr. Roscrin. Maybe some of you know about him. He is the author of the Crane's Petrophysical Handbook. He presented a keynote address during the first annual Well Analyst Conference in Libya 21 years ago, which is in year 2000. The title itself is very interesting. The Future of Petrophysics in Reservoir Description. I found one of his statements that I feel very interesting, even though frankly, I believe it will trigger a long discussion. So Ross said that exploration, development, and exploitation of oil, gas, and mineral require petrophysics first. That's quite mind-blowing, right? If you are not from the PP discipline background, so maybe you will think, why petrophysics? Is it true? So for most of us, petrophysics stereotype is a log analyst. I used to think about that also. When I graduated from my degree, I was thinking log analyst work is not that interested. I want to be a geologist. I want to go offshore doing the operation. I want to do the static modeling build. I want to be a sedimentologist. Petrophysics is kind of like very unknown animal that maybe only some people working for the service company doing the log analysis. But today, I would like to share that the petrophysics role actually has been evolved. Petrophysicists in most of the company, especially the operator, no longer calculating the net pay, porosity, and water saturation only. The role is developing way beyond the traditional role as a log analyst. So as a science and profession, if we talk about the petrophysics journey, actually it has come a long way. We know about the logging tool evolution. I will take an example from how the logging tool evolved since 1929 until now. Like Schlumberger brother back in 1929 or 92 years ago, they simply logged the first electrical log onto paper. It was very simple hand plot graph, but it marked as a turning point in the industry of hydrocarbon exploration. At present day, we know that we have lots of fancy tools, like from the imaging, the magnetic tool, signal processing, that not only convey via wireline, but also the LWD. During drilling, we can have a real-time data from subsurface. That's very interesting. In case hole work, it's also evolving. Sophisticated saturation logging when we can detect our remaining saturation. The tool to detect the leak in the casing. A cement imaging tool that's very advanced until the advanced PLT that not only calculating the rate, but we also can combine with the temperature and noise modeling. We have all those luxury now. All of that with those technology, we able to bring it to the 3D visualization with the ultimate goal to describe our reservoir. But don't forget the E&P industry also become more complex. If 50 years ago, maybe very easy to find a new discovery, we know that today it's more difficult to find the hydrocarbon. I'm not going to talk about the exploration or the appraisal or the greenfield area, but imagine if we are in the brownfield, for example, like the offshore Northwest Java operated by Pertamina, with more than 50 years production, with lot of development wells have been drilled, the $1 million question will be, if I want to produce more, where is my BCO? Where is my behind casing opportunity? Can I produce from this well that already produced with 90% water cut? Or if I want to accelerate the production, can I drill a new development well? Where to locate the infill? That's all the complex question going to help petrophysics to evolve, because now our role is growing. We are no longer calculating the reservoir property alone. That one is no longer sufficient. And then I found another interesting paper from Professor Patrick Corbett. So Professor Corbett is a lecturer in Heriot-Watt University. So she shared very interesting thought about the evolving role of the petrophysicists and imagine what future will hold. It was shared in 2005 or 16 years ago in the Journal of Petroleum Technology and SPE. Himself is a geologist by background with years of experience in industry. Prior, he pursued his doctoral degree in reservoir engineering. So for me, it's always interesting to see someone with industry background back to academic and share his idea. So he predicted the future scenario. Then I think I couldn't agree more that his prediction is almost 100% correct. Like here, I have 5 points that he predicted for the future of the oil and gas industry. The real-time data management is common. Currently, our surveillance colleague can have a real-time data from offshore without going offshore. That's very mind-blowing. You can just sit in our home or in the office and we can have data from offshore. We have more conditioning data which help the subsurface model become more realistic. We have a lot of production field that has been matured, and then we need to increase the recovery factor. I think that's also very true. In the current situation or the subsurface professional, we are working really hard to produce the hydrocarbon until the last drop. So maybe you are familiar with the EOR, the IOR concept. That's one of our effort to produce our hydrocarbon until the last drop. And also, straightforward, the point number 4 is absolutely correct. For the past 2 years, our life has changed. When the working environment become more flexible, we are working from home, you are studying from home, but I think most of us admit that even though we have some issue, but it is normal. We can have a business as usual. Also, we have very easy access to training or education material. Like this session, I think this is one of the luxury that we have that maybe like 20 years ago when I was a student, I don't have this luxury. This is one of the flexibility that can help us to grow and to learn a lot from worldwide, from all the industry or the academic experience. The Professor Corbett also shared his observation regarding the evolving role of PP. So maybe if you notice some of the technical conference nowadays like IPTC or SPE, it was very rare that petrophysics only talk about log alone. They always do integration. They always do in multidiscipline work. We will integrate the analysis with core data, with the production data, pressure, or like Dr. Zizan example, we are doing artificial intelligence. This is showing a very broadening of our profession. The new petrophysics era actually has begun. This is the integration time. Even Professor Corbett also suggested very wild idea to break the wall between reservoir geoscientist PP or RE. He doesn't believe on the title. So he said person can be valuable if they have in-depth knowledge of reservoir. I think that's also true because later on I will have an example. I think this now we have a gray area between petrophysics, reservoir geoscientists, or the reservoir engineering. That's very interesting. So nowadays, most of the company, I think I worked for the few company before, so I think I have a quite understanding like what we should do as a petrophysicist. So here I have an example from two big players, Shell and BP. So I took this information from their website. First, Shell, they claim that petrophysicists at Shell are involved in working with cutting-edge technologies. They are working in multidisciplinary integrated team. So the business involvement, not only during the field development planning, but also during well delivery, production optimization, and also reservoir management. At BP, the geoscientists, petrophysicists, and engineers work as part of collaborative team. Petrophysicists play a crucial role in our effort to produce enough oil and gas. In my current company, we have similar arrangement with Shell. Even starting from 2 years ago, Petronas has introduced the 1PE concept. So the idea is everyone working in petroleum engineering department should have a good understanding about the other discipline. And in the future run, it is expected petrophysicists can do the RE work, the RE can do log interpretation, and the other way around. That's a huge gap challenge that we need to do. It is very difficult, but back to remember with Professor Corbett suggested in 2005, regardless the title, the ability to have depth understanding about reservoir are compulsory. Okay, so we have discussed about some key characteristics of petrophysics role. So I would like to emphasize it's no longer traditional as a log analyst, but PP is part of collaborative team working in multidisciplinary team. So I prepared this diagram based on my observation and also my reading from few oil and gas company regarding the petrophysics role, scope, and also the future plan. Basically, the PP role started from the early stage in the exploration and also the acquisition time. So during the data room, when we want to buy a new field, we will do our part for the resource assessment. When we are in the exploration and development, we are helping to plan and drill the new well. Maybe if you are not really familiar, nowadays there is a title of Operation Petrophysicist. Operation Petrophysicist, they will go offshore, working similarly with the operation geologist, but especially during the logging operation time. Another role during the production stage, it's also very interesting. Nowadays, when drilling a new infill well is become more challenging and expensive, petrophysics has an important role during production enhancement. As I shared an example before this, we can do the behind casing analysis, we conduct a case hole data acquisition, as well as part of the IOR and EOR. During this stage, for sure, good reservoir engineering and production technology knowledge will be much appreciated. Again, PP is changing. PP is no longer doing the log analysis, but it's more PP like an integrator. I took this illustration from the Petrophysics for Dummy publication by Graham Davis. I think this is very interesting picture showing how busy the petrophysics could be, that we are ready to provide our help, our support for everyone. And I would admit during my career as petrophysicist, this is true. So as you can see here from geologists, geophysicists, RE, drillers, engineer, we are working with them. So petrophysics no longer working in silo, we are part of the multidiscipline team. Okay, so maybe if before this I talk a lot why petrophysics now is different, why the role is evolving, but I think you are also wondering how to be a good petrophysicist and what skill sets are required. We know that there is no formal degree given at any university for petrophysicists. So my background also, I'm geologist. I became petrophysicist by training and job training. but then I started my career as geologist first. So I used to go offshore for the operation geology. I learned about operation geology, sedimentology, and all those stuff before I changed and switched my career to petrophysicist. So here maybe if I could share, basically there is 6 major skill needed. So maybe this is also subject for discussion, but from my experience and observation, basically we need to have a good skill in numeracy, GNG knowledge, engineering, tech savvy, integration, and communication skill. I think number 1 and 4 are given. That's like a basic skill that we need to be survive in the oil and gas industry. But then the other 2, the integration and communication skill, I think is like a soft skill that we need to learn. And it will be great if petrophysicists can have those skills because our role is an integrator. So maybe if you can see the diagram here, basically we are in the middle. So I took this picture from Petronas ENP core program, but actually BP also has the similar idea about how the PP role as an integrator looks like. So basically we are working for everyone. We are working with everyone. We started from geophysics, from the log editing for the QI purpose. We are working for the resource assessment. We are working with geologists to build our static model. We are working with our RE to build our dynamic model. With our PTech and drillers to do the well planning, data acquisition, and also give some input for our production enhancement. Petrophysics, luckily, we have that luxury to work with everyone here. If I could take a quote from one of my favorite book wrote by David Epstein. He wrote a book with title Reigns, How Generalists Triumph in a Specialist World. I would refer PP as a generalist that ideally has ability to integrate broadly. So I think this very interesting idea that I would like to share today, because in the future, I believe the challenges working in subsurface industry will be very hard. So I have another message here. Start your journey with an agile mindset. I think from 2 or 3 years ago, agile mindset is become very popular. Like most of the company now they introduce how to work with an agile mindset. Technical skill is a basic need. That's a compulsory. At school, I believe most of you students are focusing on enhancing your technical skill. That's given. But I think the soft skill also important. I think what you did here in the SPWLA of University Pertamina, organizing this committee is an excellent example of the agile mindset. Soft skill is something that we need a lot of time to develop, but we tend to forget about that. So maybe if you are already familiar with the terminology of agile mindset, I would like to share one of the ideas shared by Line Kazali. I think this is a good illustration because very cute and very easy to understand. Like the one in the right here. Line basically share her idea about how is the new ways of working. I think this is something that I could relate with the future challenge, not only for me as an employee, but also even as your role as a student or even in our daily life. We need to be agile, we need to be adaptive, we need to be responsive. By doing this, we can be improved. Just left all the old ways of working on studying, like very observant, stay quiet. We are very fixed and obsolete. I don't think that's a good mindset needed in the future. Later on, maybe you can see here, the word is changing. Agile mindset can help us to be better, can help us to be, because the mindset is not fixed. We are always evolving. We are always developing. Okay, so I think that's all for me. I think I would like to take an opportunity to talk with you guys. Basically, there is 4 points of conclusion that I would like to share here. Petrophysics role is changing and always evolving. I would say that's a luxury, that's a beauty of the oil and gas industry. Multidiscipline integration is essential. Petrophysics is known as an integrator. The world only going to become more complex. We must have agile mindset. Also, the future might belong to generalists. Expand our comfort zone and always be a lifelong learner. So at last, I would like to share this picture. So maybe I know most of you, your background are in the reservoir engineering, but maybe in case you want to pursue a career in petrophysics. So this picture was initially shared by my mentor, Mr. Kokoi. So he's the former principal petrophysics at Petronas. He shared the idea that basically petrophysics is an art, same like other subsurface discipline, we can only do at the estimation. Hence, we need to quantify all the uncertainties. But here, Mr. Kokoi also highlighted that petrophysics need to have very good communication skill. That's part of the agile mindset. And as an addition of their excellent technical capability. So I would like to emphasize here, excellent technical capability is a must. But then he shared one example here. When you said, how to handle difficult people, your porosity is wrong. No, boss, log interpretation is not an exact science. I think I tend to be agree right now. Petrophysics interpretation or like geological interpretation, I don't think 100% correct. The key is how to honor the data, how to make a realistic interpretation. That's why we tend to call petrophysics and subsurface is actually an art. I think that's all for me. Thank you very much. And for all of you who choose or have chosen to join the industry as petrophysicists or the other role, I wish you a great journey ahead. All the best.
Okay. Thank you, Ibu Mai, for your fantastic presentation and very interesting material. Therefore, based on material, maybe I can conclude that petrophysics remain key in the geoscience and still be challenging for the oil and gas industry in the future. It's hoped that the technical mastery of basic petrophysical science will be continued to be developed. So, ladies and gentlemen, we forward to question and answer session, where this session has 20 minutes to ask the question. You can ask with the raise hand feature or with the Zoom chat column. Okay, maybe the participant want to ask the question about the material. Okay, everyone. Okay, the first question from Meli Apriliani from Universitas Muria Kudus. Question, I want to ask, what is the biggest challenge of being a petrophysicist? Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Melly, for the question. Okay, when you ask what is the biggest challenge of being a petrophysicist, I would admit that's a lot. Basically, maybe I could give an example. When we drilling a new well, we record some data by doing the logging. And we are, as a petrophysicist, our role at the time we are doing log interpretation. I think in the current situation, the biggest challenge is how to provide an accurate log interpretation, and also the most important part, the $1 million question is what is the fluid type? This is only one of the example. With our limited data, actually, we never know what is the fluid type downhole, whether this is oil or gas or hydrocarbon or water, before we produce the oil. So I think the biggest challenge is how to consolidate all the data that we have, and then we prepare a realistic interpretation and can be used for the future study.
Okay. Enough for Melly for the question. Okay, maybe enough. Okay, we go to the next question from Ilham Adi Pratondo from the same university, Muria Kudus. And he asked about, this is my first time hearing the word petrophysics, and I'm still a little confused about it. Can you explain more about petrophysics and what is the petrophysics purpose? Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ilham. I think petrophysics, maybe I mentioned before, maybe not that famous compared with the other title in subsurface industry like geologist or reservoir engineering. I agree. So most of us still thinking petrophysics is doing the log interpretation only. But then I need to correct a bit. That's not all the role of petrophysics. So basically, if we are by the definition, petrophysics is a study about rock and physics. So if we compare with geologists that doing qualitative interpretation, petrophysics is more quantitative. So I can give an example. Maybe if before this I share an example about the log interpretation while drilling, I would like to give another example when we build our static and dynamic model. So maybe if you are familiar with the terminology field development planning, one of the scope of field development planning, we need to have the robust subsurface interpretation first. So we build our static and we build our dynamic model. The static model built by geologists, but petrophysics will supply some of the input to geologists. So for this current role, petrophysics will do the log interpretation, will do the fluid contact interpretation, we are doing the rock typing. Basically, we provide the input for geologists build their static model. This is one of the example. In another example, if we are working in the production enhancement, petrophysics will work with our surveillance engineer, with our production technology to do the well surveillance and also monitoring. So usually in this role, petrophysics will identify the location of behind casing analysis for doing the add perforation, and also to plan some case hole data acquisition to find the remaining oil or to identify what is the remaining potential for the well. So if I can conclude, the role is very broad. The purpose basically is the same with other discipline to do the reservoir description. So I hope this can answer your question. If you are still not clear, you can contact me later.
Okay, Ilham, is clear, or you want to ask the other question? Okay, maybe enough. Okay, the next question from Bram Aditya, North Sumatra University. The question, what are example of petrophysics work related to model builder?
Okay. Thank you for the question, Bram. So before this, I share a bit with Ilham regarding what is the role of petrophysics. So maybe if you are familiar with the step-by-step to build the subsurface model. So we have two type of model, the static model and the dynamic model. The static model is the initial model that we built incorporating the seismic and the log data. So for these states, petrophysics will provide the log interpretation. Basically, for calculating the volumetric, we have few properties that we need to have: the porosity, the net to gross, and the saturation. So petrophysics will provide the log interpretation, consists of the porosity and also the saturation. Also, we provide the saturation modeling methodology, and also we analyze the fluid contact for the saturation modeling purpose. This is for the static model. For the dynamic model, reservoir engineer will took the static model from geologists and add on some of the production data. So for these states, petrophysicists will work together with our RE to help them to build a good history maps and also prediction. So basically, petrophysics will provide input for static and also dynamic model. Hope that can answer your question.
Maybe Bram is clear for the answer. Okay, maybe it's clear. Okay, the other participant, you can ask the question from raise hand feature on Zoom chat column. Okay, the other question. Okay. Okay, maybe I want to ask question for Ibu Mai. So maybe this basic for what student can prepare and do to get a good career as a petrophysicist after graduate in the university.
Okay. I think nowadays, compare with my experience before, most of the company, they already open the opportunity to become petrophysicist for the fresh graduate. Also, I think from my observation, my background is geologist. Some of my petrophysics friends, they have background in reservoir engineering. They have also background in geophysics. Also, some people came from the service company. They have the background in non-geoscience like physics and also chemical engineering. So I think if you want to become a petrophysics, you need to have a basic knowledge about geoscience. You need to have a good knowledge of reservoir engineering, and also you need to have knowledge about the operation. The operation here is a drilling operation or also logging operation. So I think that three important skills that we need to have. I know that's not easy, but then if you have an opportunity to become geologist or to become an RE, just take that opportunity. Later on along the year, if you want to switch the career and there is an opportunity, I think you still can also switch. So I don't say petrophysics is like the ultimate science in subsurface, but that's a very interesting science. But yeah, if you want to pursue the career, you need those three knowledge: the GNG, geoscience, reservoir engineering, and also operation.
Okay, thank you, Ibu Mai, for your answer. And maybe this is the last question from Pascalis, President IPW LA. Okay, from Pertamina University, the question: geothermal is quite hype right now. Is there any differences of petrophysics role in oil and gas in the geothermal.
Okay, thank you, Vasalis. I don't have much experience in geothermal or knowledge in geothermal, but I think one of the different of petrophysics role for geothermal, the logging or the log and interpretation will be quite simple compared with the oil and gas. But then the most important part that maybe petrophysics can contribute is during the drilling operation or the well planning. So as petrophysicists also, we learn how to prepare the pore prediction and fracture gradient for drilling purpose. I think that knowledge also will be useful when we are in the geothermal to, especially when we drill a new well. Yeah.
Okay, Pascal, enough? Okay, maybe enough.
Yes, enough. Thank you, Miss Bri.
By the way, moderator, I'm just curious. Maybe can I have a question? So
Okay.
the SPWLA in University Pertamina, the student mostly came from which major? Is it from petroleum engineering or geology?
Okay, we come from petroleum engineering, geology, and geophysics.
Okay,
So,
I think
we
that's
combine.
very nice to hear. I guess you are also very active, so I really appreciate. I'm so happy to see that.
Okay, okay. Thank you, Ibu Mai, for your appreciation. Okay, because time is limited, so this is amazing discussion. Thank you for the participant, but we are sorry because the time for question and answer limited. I hope we can continue in other forum. In this second session, I'm Teddy Ivanjana as the second moderator. I will close this second session with our fantastic speaker, Ibu Mai Hari Hendrawati. Ibu Mai Sari Hendrawati, sorry. Thank you for your time, Bu Mai. I hope we can discuss again in another time.
You're welcome.
Okay. Also, next virtual handover session for Ibu Mai, and I hand over to Master of Ceremony, Vina. Time is yours.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you to Mr. Teddy, and thanks to Mrs. May with the presentation of material in the form of petrophysics and challenges in the futures. Material that must be known and studied by petrophysicists. Next, we enter the virtual souvenir handover session as a form of International Petrowell's gratitude to the speakers. The distribution of virtual handover to Mrs. May Sari Hendrawati by the project manager of International Petrowell 2021, namely Mr. Erwin Adi. To Mr. Erwin, the time and screen is yours.
Okay, thank you, moderator. On behalf of the entire SPWLA Universitas Pertamina Student Chapter Management, I would like to express my deepest gratitude to all of our speakers today. That was amazing. To Ibu Meisari Hendrawati, we would like to say thank you for your support and knowledge given to us. And we present you this memento, and hopefully this memento can be accepted.
Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you, Ibu Mai. Back to moderator.
Okay, thank you to Mr. Erwin. Next is the documentation section, which will be given to the International Petrowell Media Division. The person in charge is welcome to do the documentation.
Okay, everyone. I will take a photo. Okay, here are 3 slides. For the first slide, in the count of 3, 3, 2, 1. 3, 2, and 1. And the last slide, 3, 2, and 1. Okay, thank you very much. Back to MC.
Okay, thanks to Media Division. As a form of feedback for the International Petrowell Annual Forum events and improvement in future events, it is hoped that all participants fill out the link survey link listed on the screen and Zoom chat. Filling out the survey links are mandatory if you want to get an e-certificate. Ladies and gentlemen, we already at the end of International Petrobel 2021 Annual Forum. I want to thank all participant, committee, the speakers for making International Petrobel 2021 happen. Thank you to all participants, to the speaker, and last but not least, to all the committee. And to all participants, don't leave the group chat because all the information about the award day PSCC will be given in the group chat. Don't forget to join another International Petrobel 2021 virtual seminar yet next year. And also, it's hoped that participants who want to watch the PSCC awarding can stay on Zoom because PSCC awarding time will start in about 15 minutes after break time. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, finally, we come to the long-awaited session for the International Petrawell 2021 Finalist Petrawell Case Study Competition. You guys have successfully passed several stages, started with abstract stage to the final case submission. On behalf of the committee, I would like to thank the finalists and contestants who have participated in the PACC contest as part of the International Petrawell 2021 event. To efficiently the time, let's just start the awarding event. To increase the enthusiasm to carry out the Tridharma perguruan tinggi in the field of education and the goal of Indonesian nation, that is mencerdaskan kehidupan bangsa. So let us listen the song Indonesia Raya. This is the submission team for Pastoral Case Study Competition 2021.
This is the finalist of Petrawell Study Case Competition 2021. The team's finalists are: first, Earth Science from Universitas Brawijaya. The leader, Hoiria Putri Septiani. The members, Reka Dwi Adityawan, Farhan Rizky Ramadan. Second, Gama Rio from Rio de Janeiro State University. The leader, Alam Silva Celis. The members: Bruna Pozis Joya de Souza, Davi Antanasio Escoal. Third, geologer from Universitas Pertamina. The leader, Ulrike Johanna. The members, Anis Sofia, Arum Widyastuti. Fourth, Aldo Rado from Universitas Brawijaya. The leader, Rinda Vianita Setia Putri. The members, Intan Sharifah, Fauza Nurrahman. Fifth, Greenfield Team from Universitas Pembangunan Nasional Veteran Yogyakarta. The leader, Muhammad Cakrawala Persada. The members, Sari Puji Astuti, Nuraisha Ningsi. This is the winner for Petrol Case Study Competition 2021. Second runner-up, first runner-up, and the champion are
That was the announcement of the PACC awarding 2021 winners. Congratulations to the winners who have gotten the best results from their struggle. Lastly, for friends who haven't been lucky today, hopefully you can become winners at the upcoming International Petrowell 2021 event. Ladies and gentlemen, we are already at the end of the awarding Petrowell Case Study Competition International Petrowell 2021. I want to thank all participants, committee, the judges, to all teams, to the judges, and last but not least, to all the committee and the sponsors. And to all finalists, don't leave the group chat because all the information about the Hanover Rewards will be given in the group chat. Don't forget to join another competition in International Petrowell 2022 next year. That's all. Thank you so much for everyone looking forward in this International Petrowell 2021. I'm Vinarati Manjari as a Master of Ceremony on behalf of the committee. Gratefully thank you for all of us. Good afternoon and keep safe and stay healthy. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.